Time for us to welcome our next guest to the show. Suchandrika Chakrabarti is a journalist and stand-up comedian, and she joins me on the line now to talk all about her show, I Miss Amy Winehouse. Hello, how are you? Good afternoon.
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad at all. This is very exciting, and I've been talking to the audience, obviously, about the fact that you've got your show, I Miss Amy Winehouse, but also the fact that I read about that you started stand up comedy in January 2020, which is not a long time ago at all. What made you decide I'm going to take up stand up comedy? Had it been something you'd wanted to do for a while?
Yeah, it had been. So my background is in like freelance journalism, and I'd say that has become a really multimedia kind of job. And I found myself sort of speaking in public a lot and hosting podcasts as well. So I'd gone from really kind of writing job at the beginning to doing all these different things, and I really enjoyed it. And the feedback I got from the podcast was, "Oh, do you do stand-up comedy?" And I was like, "No, but it's like my dream." And then I was like, "Well, why am I not saying yes?" I live in London. It'd be really simple to figure out how to get started. I should just do it.
Mm.
So I felt I needed a course. I think, weirdly, like, I love stand up, and I guess I didn't realize how written it is. So I'm glad I did a course because then I got writing in my first 5 minutes, and I found the performing side came like fairly easily. Um, and then obviously the pandemic hit because that was great timing to start
Yeah.
comedy. But I didn't mind the Zoom gigs, I think because I was so new to comedy, it wasn't my source of income. And
Right.
I just didn't have any expectations. I was like, I've just started, but it'd be a shame to stop.
Mm.
So I found the Zoom gigs quite helpful for developing material. And then also, I think as pretty much all freelance journalists have in their back pocket, I was trying to write a novel, and it
Right.
was based around, aren't we all? It was based around, the noughties. I'm the same age as Amy Winehouse, and in that period when she was very, very famous, I was working in Camden and I was partying pretty hard in Camden, as was like the culture at the time, the drinking culture, and
Yes.
also in the pandemic, I wouldn't say I missed that stuff because I need to be in bed pretty early these days. But it was like the opposite experience of pandemic. You couldn't see anyone, you couldn't meet anyone
Mm.
new. It was, you could be tactile. But back then, it was like drinking, dancing until all hours, meeting new people all the time. And I just thought, that's a really interesting period to think about. And the novel wasn't really flowing, but I was writing stand up and I thought, "Do you know what? Could this be a show? Could I set myself a bit of a challenge and see where it goes?" And so I booked in Camden Fringe, put myself a slot, and then was like, right, I have to write a show now.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I think that sometimes that's the way to do things, though, because otherwise we kind of just float through life, and our deadlines or our, those times that we give ourselves to complete something by keep changing, and we push them back and we push them back. But when you've signed yourself up, that's it. You've got to put something together. Otherwise, you're going to have to turn up on the day and just just stand there and hope for the best. So tell us a little bit more. Obviously, like you say, you at that time you were out in Camden, and I think I read something about the fact that, and you were saying obviously that you worked, in the area, and you always kind of kept thinking that you were going to bump into Amy Winehouse. And so tell us a little bit more about how you put the show together and what people can expect from it.
Yeah, I think with Amy, so what I do with the show is I don't try to pretend I know her or understand her or speculate about her state of mind. It's much more about the celebrity persona. That's what I knew of her. That's what any of us who weren't friends with her or her family knew about her. And yeah, I felt close to her in some way. And my friends and I did have a running joke that on these nights out we'd go to the Hawley Arms. There was no well, there were bouncers, but there were no like red tape. Like you could go in, she would be there, or other famous people were there. But I never did bump into her. And my friends were like, "Oh, you two be really good friends if the way drunk people might strike up good friendships." But I think in reality, I wouldn't have gone up to her at all because her interactions with people must have been all the same. Like, "Oh my God, you're Amy Winehouse." And I would have gone shy and I wouldn't have gone up to her. But when she died, it was absolutely devastating. It was a shock because she seemed like she was getting better. And I was working in news and I was asked to go down to Camden Square where her flat was and just interview some of the mourners who were sort of out on the grass there. And it's incredible the amount of people there. And they came back for days and days. And it got me thinking about what is that collective kind of grieving because it feels like it's different to when it's
Mm.
personal, when it's someone in your life, which in my 20s I did have experience of losing people in my family. And so that contrast interested me. And also, again, we are still in a pandemic and we don't know what it's going to feel like when it's ended, but so many people are going to have learn what grief feels like, and so many people have lost time. How are we going to approach that? Is it going to be collective? Is it going to be all of us on our own? So I think all of those ideas around trying to understand what that time was about, and how it can relate to now. Plus, I think we're reassessing the noughties a
Yeah.
lot. If you look at sort of Britney Spears, women in music, and also mental health, I think
Yeah.
we're looking at those headlines and we're going, "Oh, we don't talk about people like that now." So what's changed? 'Cause it's been 20 years, which isn't a long time. Well, it is in a way, and it
Yeah.
isn't.
Well,
But
so much
so
has
much has changed.
changed, I think, hasn't it? And like you say, the conversations around mental health and the fact that we are, so much more open. And people, I was talking to somebody about their podcast a few days ago. It was Leomi Anderson, and she was talking about speaking to Michelle Williams of Destiny's Child, and saying,
Mm.
at that time they were essentially the biggest, pop band in the world, and they were, there was so much pressure on them. They were young women, but at that time no one spoke about their mental health. It wasn't even a factor. They were just expected to kind of get on with things, whereas I guess now we have mediums where we can follow the individual rather than the package that's portrayed to the world. And a lot of I guess artists and musicians and performers are very open and honest about their mental health, which I don't necessarily think they had the space to be able to do before, and the expectation was that they just didn't do that, wasn't it?
Definitely, it was. What was different about Amy was that she wasn't, or she might have been media trained, but in interviews she refused to play that game, and she was
Mm.
like, she would say things about Dido and certain other people that were very funny, but she would essentially just write them off. And that was exciting about her. But now, yes, celebrities can use their platforms to say anything about anyone, and I think they could be very honest as well. And what Amy, I felt, got slightly punished for was being very honest and living in a way that was like, I'm going to live how I want. But then what she got in return was very unkind headlines
Yes.
and a
Yeah.
lack of understanding around what might be wrong with her. And again, I don't speculate the show. I don't know. But
Mm.
it makes me wonder about my own mental health at the time and how I express myself and the lack of help
Yeah.
around. So it is comedy mostly. I promise you.
um you performed it at Brighton Fringe a few weeks ago, twice. How did it go down?
Yeah, it was nice. I think there were so many Amy fans out there. There are so many, and there'll only ever be more, I suppose, when people start discovering her work. And yeah, it was kind of a meeting of minds in a way. There were a few people as well who'd come up to me before, and they said the grief side of things was of interest to them, and it's probably the first time for quite a few people they'd been to a live show since coming out of lockdown.
Mm.
So there's a really nice atmosphere. I felt like the venue really looked after us and made sure people were socially distanced. And yeah, there's something about live performance, which again, I'm choosing to do a live performance about Amy to a certain extent, who it seemed like might have had some issues with live performance. I think if
Yes.
if you have to do so much of it all the time, it takes a certain kind of energy from you
Mm.
that's very hard to replenish. So I couldn't do 5 of those shows in a go. I did
Mm.
2 in a row, and it does take a certain kind of energy from you that you need to rest and recover from. But I think being live and being in a room together, it was just lovely and warm and fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was great.
Especially after having missed that for so long. I think from listening to your voice, I think I've seen you perform live before, actually really recently at Mother's Comedy Ball in Homerton.
Yes, yeah,
There you
yeah.
go. And you were doing some stuff about Hindu, and it was brilliant and hilarious. And it was the first stand-up show that I'd been to, obviously post, lockdown and restrictions easing, and it was exactly what I needed, to be in a room full of other people laughing. And I really, really genuinely enjoyed your set. And as soon as you started talking, I was thinking, I really recognize your voice. So what I did while you were talking is just quickly Googled you so I could see what your face looked like. And then I was like, I know, I've seen you perform live, and it was brilliant.
Oh, thank you. I do remember that room in particular as being a really fun audience who were really up for chatting.
Yeah.
And I like audience participation, but it's got to be, you've got to like have boundaries and let people kind of go, actually not. And definitely like with the show and with stand up, I've kind of I try to like, well, crowd work is okay because you're just talking to people.
Yes.
But ideally with the show, I would love to have got people to come up and do things.
Mm.
But I'm really holding off on that for this year because I think I'd rather respect someone having very strict boundaries and that they're safe and happy, than make them feel they have to do anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's so nice, isn't it? I think as a performer, but also as the audience. There's so many people who just want to get out of the house. They want to see something, and something like comedy or a fringe show is so unpredictable. You don't know
Mm.
where it will go, and you don't know what it will make you think and what you'll come out of it with. So I think there's a real joy in that. It's not pre-recorded. It's not, even if there's a script, it won't be stuck to,
Yeah,
which is
no.
a fun thing.
Well, that's true, isn't it? You never know what's going to happen, both as the performer and as the audience, and I think that's the beauty in live performance. When it comes to that, is that it's just kind of go with the flow and see what happens, and that makes it even more exciting. So you're at the Camden Fringe on Friday the 13th. Oi,
I know.
it's a good date, isn't it? Saturday the 14th, and then Sunday the 29th of August. Where can people grab tickets?
So if you go to the Camden Fringe website,
Yeah,
you can find tickets for all those performances, and they're all £5 each with concessions. And yeah, please come along. It's at the Etc. Theatre on top of the Oxford Arms on Camden High Street. So it's round the corner from the Hawley Arms if you want to meet there afterwards.
beautiful.
And yeah, just I think it is 95% a very fun show with some darker moments, but it's quite nostalgic. If you were there in the noughties or if you feel nostalgia for it, it's definitely the one for you. And yeah, I look forward to doing it in Camden.
Sounds brilliant. And just let people know where they can find you as well.
Yeah, so on Twitter, I'm at Suchandrika C. So if you can spell that, extra points to you. And then on Instagram, I'm at Suchandrika. It's all phonetic and 11 letters with several A's in it. So just slot them in where you can.
Okay.
And yeah, it should be fun.
Brilliant. It's been so lovely to talk to you. Thanks for joining us on the show. Suchandrika Chakrabarti joining us to talk all about her show, I Miss Amy Winehouse, which is taking part, or is part of, sorry, should I say, the Camden Fringe. And you can find tickets at camdenfringe.com. Definitely, I can recommend Suchandrika as a wonderful comedian. I didn't realise that I'd seen her before, and she was one of the people at the show that I went to in Homerton, which is called Mother's Comedy Ball, that I really found absolutely hilarious. So I can imagine this show is going to be brilliant.